Now, the Federal Open Markets Committee of the world's #1 central bank, the U.S. Federal Reserve, meets this week for the last time in the outgoing year 2020. And there is more this week on the business calendar than the FOMC meeting. My colleague Andrew Schmerz in New York is here to raise the curtain on the new week. Good afternoon, Andrew. Good to see you. Let's start from the pharmaceutical stocks that are on the move. Pfizer is shipping the vaccine out in batches. What's the latest on Wall Street on this?
So the first vaccines ended up in the arms of U.S. healthcare workers today across the country, and that was to be expected as the vaccine was approved for emergency use just on Friday. That is helping to lift the stock of Pfizer and other pharmaceuticals, as well as it's giving some gains to the overall markets. The markets were in the red this morning, but both the NASDAQ and the Dow are slightly on the positive side today. Some news on the stimulus front, of course. Bipartisan effort is still being pushed. This is the $908 billion proposal that is earmarked for the stimulus money that a group of senators came up with a couple of weeks ago that has not gained much traction. However, lawmakers, part of that group, are hoping to spur interest, and to some extent they may have done that. The House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin, who have become rather phone buddies over the past month, were once again on the phone on Sunday. Reportedly, they spoke for half an hour, and they are expected to speak again today. There is some stock market news regarding individual shares today. DoorDash down 7% on downgrades over valuation. It ran up 80% in its IPO debut last week. And of course, Airbnb also down 8%. It too was downgraded because of valuations. And of course, we have political news with the Electoral College all meeting today at the individual state locations to certify Joe Biden as the next president of the United States. From there, it will go to Congress. Congress has to certify the certifications. That's pretty much pro forma at this point.
So what happened this morning? Was that a glitch with Gmail, with Google, with YouTube? The global information superhighway, is the backup up and running right now, so to speak?
Yeah, so Gmail, Google Drive, and YouTube were not really operational this morning. If you tried to watch some cat videos on YouTube, you were stymied, but it was a pretty big problem. All of Google's services across the board faced disruption of service messages and error messages as people tried to log on. They are all now up and running. Google says this was an internal problem with its servers, not any external threat. Now, Google is not just a consumer-facing company. It has a very large corporate footprint. Some of the biggest publicly traded companies use Google services, including Google Drive and Gmail. You know, many companies' websites are directed by Gmail. So this was a big problem, and it's a sign of what could happen when you put all of your proverbial technology eggs into one basket. But as of now, the services are back up and running.
So when Jerome Powell and the rest of the FOMC meet this week, will the $908 billion stimulus decision by the Congress be part? Will this make the job of Jerome Powell and his team a lot easier in deciding how the rate decision or the economy should go into the new year?
Probably not by much. The Federal Reserve meets this week for the last meeting of the new year, and basically they have a couple of decisions to make. The markets are going to look to see if their position on asset purchases will change. The Fed has been buying some $80 billion of Treasury bonds each month, and that's basically spending money with one hand and giving it to the other, because they print the Treasury bonds on one side of the building and then they buy them on the other side of the building. It's a way for the government to borrow money. They also spend $40 billion in buying up mortgage-backed securities to help prop up the housing market, which has been very strong. Fed is expected to keep its monetary policy the same when it comes to the super low interest rate. So the Fed meeting this week, markets looking for not much of a change across the board. Anything that they do that is a change will upset the markets in either direction.
Well, the climate folks are saying that the carbon dioxide footprint this year has been much smaller than the previous year. Do we say thank you to COVID-19 pandemic, the virus? Is that a good side of it all?
Well, it's clearly a sign because what did people not do this past year? Well, they didn't drive. And they certainly didn't fly. And cars and vehicles on the road account for a majority of carbon dioxide emissions. So that's mostly good news for the environment. We don't know how long it will last, especially if there's pent-up demand and everybody decides to get into their cars come the spring or when they get the shot in the arm. Global Carbon Project, that's the group that measures this, says emissions dropped by a record 7%. That's the biggest drop in history. We'll see if it lasts. We don't really know. Car companies have been selling a lot more cars than they have in previous years, and eventually people are going to want to drive them. A bunch of the cars are Teslas, though, so that could be good in the short term, as those are obviously electric powered.
So the holiday is almost here, Andrew, and on Friday we spoke about Disney streaming and getting more consumers, because about 200 million, but it's going to become more expensive for me to stream over the holiday. Is it?
So the good news is you're going to have a lot more movies to watch. The bad news is it's going to cost you more. Basically, price hikes are coming for almost all of the streaming service analysts say. Disney Plus says it will raise prices in March by $1 to $7.99 a month. Hulu and ESPN Plus, also Disney products, raising their prices to $13.99 a month. And this is just likely the beginning because Americans at first, needed, no streaming services. Then they needed one streaming service. Netflix became the go-to company, but then they bought Amazon, and then they buy Disney Plus, and they buy Prime, and they buy Hulu. And basically, you need all of the streaming services, and it's going to start, taking away from cable, which of course has been very hard pressed to stop the cord cutting. Their argument has always been cable was more expensive than the streaming services. But when you add up all the services each month, you're probably going to end up paying the same or, if not more, for the streaming services.
I think I'm just going to find somewhere to sit on a veranda and watch a very nice sunset. That's streaming straight from the galaxy up there. I don't want to just streaming down free of charge. Have a great day on Wall Street. If it's going to cost me so much to just stream all those devices. That's my friend and colleague Andrew Schmerz from Wall Street. Let's talk about the North African market, shall we? Okay, that's your Egyptian market today, 0.4% to start. The second trading day of the week, Egypt's market starts on Sunday, by the way. So this is the second trading day of the week, 11,000. Moroccan Stock Exchange seemed to be outpacing at the 11,000 level of his, but softened 0.23% today, and almost by the same margin for the Tunisian market. Finally, on the North African news side, of course, this is big news today about Africa. And we're getting a whole lot of response. The MUFG and Afreximbank, they got in together and put in this $520 million COVID-19 response deal on behalf of Afreximbank. It's all coming with love from Japan, by the way. And Orascom Development in Egypt is selling its entire stakes in the subsidiary for 128 million Egyptian pounds. And Egypt Air is restructuring 10 billion pounds of its debts to foreign lenders. It sounds similar to South African Airways, is it? Yes, all the airlines are finding very difficult in troubled weather right now. Fitch has affirmed AAA rating of BMC Money Market Fund. And finally, North Africa, Morocco. Massa Morocco is completing 1.4 billion dirhams bond for its subsidiary by the name TC3PC, listed on that stock exchange. Do I have a second for the European markets trading day? Give it out to me very quickly, just a few seconds. And here you go with this. And you find a flat lining there for the London Stock Exchange as those discussions around Brexit with Brussels continue on that extension. Thank you, everyone. And that's the show tonight. I am Bosin Amafaye. We thank you for watching. Goodbye from Lagos. I'll see you again tomorrow. Bye, everyone.